doing, sir? I'm excited about this episode.
Yeah. You want to tell people a little bit about how this kind of came about?
Um, I think this pretty much came about, obviously I do according to hip hop as well. Um, had a conversation just about the Grammys in general and got to a place where it ended up reflecting on the fact that, Prince and Michael Jackson have
Yeah. He's got.
I mean, just in terms of like popular music, I think that personally is absurd, even though I find Prince to be the superior artist. Dialogue stretch. I mean, like that. Um, and just I think we've gotten into me of the factor of like where white and black culture have a factor in who is awarded these awards, particularly album of the year. Um, which actually, even though I said it on according to hip hop, is more appropriate for our space here on Mirror Music, because quite frankly, we created Mirror Music to help bridge some of those gaps between our worlds via music.
Yep.
And so I think it's only appropriate and proper that we have this dialogue on this show. And also think it's appropriate and proper that we're covering the 1988 Grammy of the Year, Album of the Year, which, quite frankly, two of the greatest albums ever made got made that year.
Yeah.
Because these are two of the best pieces of music that you'll find. Far of a tangent. I've listened to Joshua
Hey,
Tree probably
jumping a little
more.
bit. I don't know if
I
somebody's
think the only
texting
rock.
you, but like it jumped that last little bit. You said I don't want to go on too far of a tangent, and then it kind of.
Oh, well, I think the only Joshua Tree life, mine, and Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. And so I
Yeah.
think extremely highly of Joshua Tree. Like I don't find the album to have any cracks or flaws, quite
We've had
frankly.
that
And I
conversation.
told you it's a perfect. There, yeah, there haven't been too many perfect albums ever made, in my opinion, and I feel like we're about to discuss
Mm-hmm.
two of them, not just one of them. The thing that I find kind of startling, and I'm biased, Andrew. I'll tell you the truth. Like, yeah, like for me, I think "Sign of the Times" is the greatest album ever made, and I think the albums that are in competition with it for me are "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye and "Songs in the Key of Life" by Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
But I would put the Joshua Tree in that conversation. Like if I was picking about 10 to 15 albums, the Joshua Tree would be one of those albums that I would put in that mix. So although I'm biased, I'm
Yeah.
very, very clear about what the Joshua Tree by U2 is. It's quite simply, I mean, it's the best rock album of the 80s. Am I wrong?
You could certainly make that argument. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable argument to make. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Like if somebody said, no, the Joshua Tree is the best rock album of the 80s, it's like you wouldn't have too many albums that you could like give a dissenting opinion with, right?
There's not a ton at all that have the same. There aren't many that. One of the things it does, I told you this is a Beatles album. It's not really, but it's like a perfect album beginning to end, right? There's no filler, there's no cracks, there's no bad notes, there's no bad lyrics, there's nothing, right? Like there's nothing that you can pick apart there. There are other albums that I listen to as much as the Joshua Tree from the 80s, like personally for my own whatever edification, but this has, I think, probably the best combination of originality, musicianship, and popular, like inroads into the popular culture too. Like it has both of those things. I think like in the musical history, REM's Murmur, which is 1981, would have been like, because that started all the college rock radio stuff that led to Nirvana and Pixies and all that kind of stuff. But it did not have Where the Streets Have No Name. It did not have I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. It didn't have With or Without You. It doesn't have that kind of epic quality. And then the other ones that you would have the conversation about that are gigantic albums. The other one from this year that doesn't get mentioned or didn't get mentioned in the album of the year conversation at all is Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. That's Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise. Like that album came out that year too, um, but is not to me as strong from beginning to end. It has like the
It's not.
moments.
It,
It doesn't have the and there's lots of hair rock band thing like Def Leppard's Hysteria does. Those have like the huge hits, but there aren't solid like this all the way from beginning to end.
so I think that's where the Joshua Tree separates itself from its rock contemporaries, at least from the stuff that I heard, is that it has the high moments, but
Hmm.
it has the in musicianship, songwriting, and just outright genius
Yeah,
to it. Like
there's
the
nothing.
album has genius. So yeah, so I'll tell you, as much as I love both of these albums, I've never listened to the Sign of the Times by Prince and the Joshua Tree by U2 back to back,
I haven't either.
and they're frighteningly similar.
They are. They're much more similar than I thought they were going to be.
Me too. I was actually, for as well as I know both of these albums, I was actually surprised at myself. It's like I've never connected these albums the way that I should. These albums have similar themes,
Yeah.
similar levels of genius, similar levels of concern about the state of America,
Mhm. And the world. Yeah.
uh, and the world. Love songs that can be used for a woman and for God.
Hmm.
Like both of these albums have all of those things. And here's what else I didn't notice. I forgot, Andrew. These albums were only released 2.5 weeks apart.
Were they really? I didn't know they were that close.
So the Joshua Tree was released on March 9th, 1987. Sign of the Times was released March 30th.
Wow, that's early in the year.
So they've literally been more connected than we realize. Man,
You're free. You're freezing for now. Come back and say,
yeah, like Bullet in the
yeah. Bullet the Blue Sky. Yeah.
yeah, Bullet the Blue Sky. I mean, it's very comparable to the record Sign of the Times.
Hmm.
Like there are actually records on here that are comparable in terms of the theme, in terms of the musicianship, and both of these albums do an excellent job of the artists, Bono and Prince,
Hmm.
color outside and inside of the lines at the same damn time, which is very, very hard to do in music. Like
Yeah.
Prince is using traditional soul formats,
Hmm. Yeah, he is.
Bono is traditional rock formats,
Hmm.
but the stuff that they're saying within those formats is literally the stuff that legends are made of.
Which is the same kind of stuff you named. What's Going On as one of the other greatest albums to you. That also is thematically similar to this.
Yeah,
Well,
yes. And it's kind of ironic, because I think everybody knows U2 is from Ireland.
mhm,
Like they talk about the state of America more than the American rock bands did for that time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you gotta love the irony of that.
yeah. They were very socially conscious, which is why you see Bono on the "We Are the World" song and not a lot of the other American rock and roll. Like you don't see them as much. So, um, I mean, you have Cyndi Lauper's and that kind of thing, but like it's not the same for sure.
Now, here's what I will tell you because I did my research. Um, a lot of people. This is Prince's first album without the Revolution in about 5 years, who he had most of his notoriety and success with.
Right.
But a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these songs got done before the band disbanded, and he kept certain parts. So Wendy and Lisa and Dr. Fink and everybody are still very much a part of Sign of the Times. And so, as much as this is people look at it as his departure and his disbanding of the Revolution and the solo mission, he still had pieces of the Revolution on there. Like Wendy and Lisa are on the background and play instruments on about 4 or 5 of the songs of the 16-track double album. I think it's 16 tracks altogether, 9 on one side, 16. So, and much like U2, recorded this album in about a year's time.
Mm,
That's what I'm like. It's frightening how similar even the background goes of these songs because, much like U2 with the Joshua Tree, there are about 7 or 8 songs that didn't make this cut because he wanted to make it a triple album, and Warner Brothers was like,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Much like
I
much
remember
like you,
that. I was like,
yeah, yeah, much like U2 with the Joshua Tree, they had about another 6 or 7 songs that they wanted to include. They just didn't feel like it fit and would hurt the conciseness of the album. So even the process of making these albums is very similar. And what you'll find is that Bono, I believe, is 27 at the time. Prince is 29.
mhm,
They're at the peak of their creative genius.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
this is where, like, I think for both of them, the songwriters that they're known as and revered as, these are the albums that you go to.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, this is where it's at. And it's also funny and ironic too because Sign of the Times is actually more critically reviewed than Joshua Tree. Like like on Metacritic, Sign of
Mhm.
the Times has a 99 rating out of 100.
Wow.
And if you go back and look at like all the reviews that have been done for Sign of the Times and Joshua Tree, and that's not to say Joshua Tree doesn't have extremely high reviews, Andrew, because it does.
You should.
But right, but I mean, most people that reviewed Sign of the Times gave it a perfect 10 or a perfect 5 or a perfect 4, whatever the rating was.
Right. Whatever the highest was, sure.
Whatever the highest score was, it got the highest score. And so that does lead me to ask questions as a black man. It's like, not it's funny to have this conversation. It's like, well, why did the Joshua Tree win Album of the Year over Sign of the Times? Is that some cultural indifference going on where it's like because Sign of the Times didn't perform as well critically as Prince's previous albums, and because the Joshua Tree was this Haley's Comet of, you
Super.
know, it's very much Purple Rain like and
Yeah.
Thriller like in record sales,
Mhm.
you know? And so is the mass appeal of it have something to do with it? Because I'll tell you, between both of these albums, I think the best song between both of the albums is Adore by Prince. First of all, here's another comparison to the album. This is what I mean. I took so many notes on this.
I know. I have like a whole, yeah.
The beginning and endings to these albums is as good as you find. Like the first song on Sign of the Times and Adore at the end, masterful. Same thing on the Joshua Tree. The
Yeah.
beginning, the first song and the last song encapsulate and bring it all together. And those songs belong exactly where they belong and only there. But the rest of the songs in between on both of the albums is so good that these two are two of the few albums where, well, outside of the first song and the last song, it really didn't matter how you fucking sequence the album because damn near every song is brilliant. You literally could have just like threw these songs in a bag outside of the intros and the outros, and it still would have been masterpieces because there's just no denying the extremely high level of song making and musicianship and lyrics and the hook writing on both of these albums.
Hmm.
Stellar.
Yeah.
And so these albums are about as good as it gets. And I'm a Nirvana fan,
Mm.
and they're probably my favorite rock band of all time. I found myself listening to the Joshua Tree, and I'm like, Nevermind's not better than this.
Mm. It's it's a different thing, right? We can have that conversation because that there were tons of when we get to the that'll be the 92 one from the 1991 year of 1991 for 1992 is when we get there in a few weeks. But um, I feel fairly strongly that that's the one that I will end up talking about is Nevermind, and it's a very different thing, right? It's not.
It is.
It's coming from different traditions. It's coming from like there's lots of different pieces of it, and it's a different kind of supernova, right?
Right.
Um, so it's I think U2 fits more as a crossover one though because he is definitely pulling from the soul traditions. He's definitely pulling from those kind of traditions. Um, you don't hear Kurt Cobain singing melodically unless you know what you're listening for. Like it sounds more screamish if you don't know what you're listening for. But Bono is like a very straight ahead. I mean, his dad was an opera singer, right? It's like he's a very straight ahead He's an incredible, incredible singer. Like his voice just itself is incredible too. So um, there's some comments here that say that they think that the producers on U2 had a lot to do with the quality, and Prince did it all himself. For the Sign of the Times, mostly himself too. And then
Well,
some Diamonds and Pearls are better than both of these.
first of all, that's like I love Diamonds and Pearls. It's probably Prince's last like truly magnificent piece of work. It's not in the conversation with these two albums even remotely. And I say that respectfully as somebody that knows his catalog in and out. It's just not this
Loves
like
Prince. Like, I mean, this is one of the biggest Prince fans that I know. Like, just
this I mean like these two albums are as high as it gets.
yeah.
So Diamonds and Pearls, as much as I love it, this is like Diamonds and Pearls is like a step or two below this. Like these are all time album conversations when we're talking about these two albums. This isn't just like
We have
album.
to differentiate between like this is the one that I like the best and what actually is like. I mean, that's a hard conversation to have, right?
Um, what else? What else did they say? Well, here's the thing: people have to understand this when you're dealing with Prince. Part of why I think so highly of Prince is that well, you can say that about Prince in relationship to almost everybody else who's made a great album too, because he literally does produce. It says it on the back: produced, arranged,
Right.
composed by Prince. And outside of his time with Wendy and Lisa, he wrote most of the damn lyrics too. And even when they were around, he was writing most of the damn lyrics because he didn't want to hear their stuff because he thought his stuff was better, and his stuff was better because he's Prince. And so, you know what I'm saying? It's like, so I don't think that's necessarily fair to the Joshua Tree, just from the perspective of like, well, that's why I think Prince is the greatest artist who ever lived. Because if we're parsing hairs and like, making it a tiebreaker type of situation, it's like, well, Michael Jackson had Quincy Jones.
Yeah.
You two had producers that did the tree, and they had the engineer, the lady who sequenced the album for them. Like you two didn't even sequence the Joshua Tree, so it's like if you want to give a nod to Prince for that, like I understand that, but that's what I mean about how high quality these songs are. It's like I don't give a shit how she mixed the album or engineered it or did the order of the songs. All she had to do was get the first song and the last song right, because the rest of this shit is just classic material. It really wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
Like you could have put I still haven't found what I'm looking for as the second to last song, and it would still make sense. I still haven't found what I'm looking for as one of my favorite songs of all time. I don't know if I've told you that.
I didn't know that. We talked about that as for those of you who haven't followed the Mirror Music journey for a long time. We have a whole episode about I still haven't found what I'm looking for. What did we do that with? I forget. I don't remember what song we did that with.
Time ago, it was a Tupac song, maybe.
Might have been. So it's so yeah, we had a longer conversation about that song. It is extraordinary. I've told you this before. I would put the first three songs on Joshua Tree. That's in the conversation for the best three songs sequenced run of any album ever. I mean, the high water mark is obviously Thriller, Beat It, Billie Jean. Like that's the high water mark. Um, but that the but I still haven't found. No, it's Where the Streets Have No Name. I still haven't found what I'm looking for, and With or Without You is in that conversation as well.
I mean, just personally, if I was being objective, I would tell you that the start to the Joshua Tree is arguably the best album start off in music history.
Yeah, it's
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 extremely
so good.
arguable. I think it's better than the start off the Purple Rain and Thriller. And you know how I feel about Michael Jackson and Prince. But if we're being objective, where I will give the Joshua Tree higher marks and Sign of the Times is definitely the start. I think Sign of the Times is a better song inherently because of the message than those three songs. But this is what I mean about Bono coloring inside but outside of the lines. Those are formulaic rock songs with a message and a high level of musicianship. It's doing the simple and the complex all at once. It's extremely hard to do,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know? Like it's hard to have a song go number 1 where you're singing lyrics like I've seen Kingdom Come.
right.
You know what I mean? It's just hard to do. And so it's I would equate I would equate With or Without You very much to Adore in the sense that the love song is just so
Mm,
that's what I mean is that these albums are more similar than I realize because I can give comparative analysis about some of the songs, some of the structure of the songs, and some of the actual songwriting of the songs. So they were very much and also too, Bono and Prince are two of the more socially conscious writers of their generation, and it bleeds through both of these albums. Like Sign of the Time starts off in France, a skinny man died of a big disease with a little name.
Right.
You know, it's like so the social consciousness of both these artists has always been prevalent, I think, in their earlier works,
Yeah.
but never prevalent in these pieces of work. It's almost like where, like Prince has a song on 1999 called Ronnie Talked to Russia, talking about Reagan. Ronnie talked to Russia about the Cold War.
Right.
So he's always been politically conscious about what he's seen, and so has Bono. But it's like on these albums, their political consciousness met their high level hit making songwriting abilities. Like
Right.
Ronnie is one of the weaker records on 1999. You know what I mean? Sign of the Times is one of Prince's best songs.
Hmm. Yeah. No, you're looking for social commentary. That you're looking for REM's Document. That was also this year. That's It's Into the World as We Know It, and The One I Love, and Exhuming McCarthy, and
That
like that.
disco
That's that. That was that year.
that I love. That
Yeah.
one, is that
One,
this year?
When I Left Behind. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's yeah.
that's my shit too. I love that record.
Yeah. That
This
we should
out to the one that I love. That's it, right? That's the one you're talking about?
bow to the one I love. Yeah, and it's a 2 chord song, really, basically. So
Yeah.
it's that and It's Into the World as We Know It are back to back on that record, actually. But the beginning of that album is those 2 songs. I mean, It's Into the World as We Know It has more political references, but it's not really you there still? You jumped out a little bit.
Can you not see me? Can you hear
I,
me? Can you?
I can hear you. I cannot see you. But It's in the World has a lot of like political lyrics, but not really um, political messaging. Really, the earlier songs on that Finest Work song, Exhuming McCarthy, I mean, those kind of things are much more politically whatever. I don't know. I think he's having technical difficulties, so I'll sit here and run my mouth for a minute. Um, so yeah, the where can we go with this? We have to talk about before much longer, like how we're defining the greatest album of the year, because we're talking not just about the biggest one, right? And I think a lot of times the Grammys give it to the biggest one, right? The biggest album of the year. Like this past year, whether you like Taylor Swift or not, Taylor Swift's Midnights was the biggest album of the year, right? Um, and I think in many ways, this year of 1988 that we're talking about today, um, that the Joshua Tree was the biggest album of the year. Let me see if I can add him back here. Yes, I'm in the closet recording studio. That's a running joke on this channel. Yeah, that's the space that I have. Somebody asked me if I was in a closet. Yes, um, this is the space that I have to do this. It's a very full walk-in closet.
Do me a favor. Send me the link to my phone again for this show, right quick, if you can.
Okay, let me
If
see now.
that happens again, switch to the iPad.
Okay,
No, you're breaking up. What happened?
I was breaking up because I moved like over to get the link. Um,
Oh,
so I will. Do you want me to text it to you again? Is that what you need?
yeah, just text it to me again so I can put it up in my iPad.
I can on this computer quick.
To
Hold
me,
on.
and this is a super important conversation.
All right.
I want to get to something. I feel like I've been rambling too
All
much.
right. So I texted it to you again. I think you got and yeah, it does. It does have good acoustics in here too. That's part of the. It's one of the bonus points of this that it actually does cushion all of the echoes and stuff like that. So um, I think we're good now. He froze for a second because I just texted him something. Um, so yeah, it's been what I started talking about as you were getting reset is that as part of this conversation has to be um, setting parameters. We don't necessarily have to make a rubric, but like how are we defining what the best album of the year is? Because I think a lot of the times when I've gone back after we've started talking about doing the show, like this particular series, um, looking and see which ones actually won most of the years, and not all of the time, but much of the time, the album with the biggest sales, or the one that was the biggest in the culture, in the wider culture, not like a specific one, but like in the zeitgeist of the year or whatever, tends to win. Um, which is not necessarily the same thing as saying which is the best album of the year.
Correct. I mean, and not to knock REM, but it's like, okay, so here's where it becomes a cultural thing for black people. You're gonna have a hard time convincing black culture that you two deserve to beat Michael Jackson, Prince, and Whitney Houston all in the.
Right.
That was the competition. So the competition was almost succinctly black, and so it would have been different. Maybe had REM or or Aerosmith, was it?
Um, Guns N' Roses was that year.
Guns N' Roses was that
I
year.
think
It would have been different.
also the year that was like Janie's Got a Gun and that kind of thing too. If we're
Janie's Got a Gun.
mhm.
But it probably would, like, it would be easier to digest in black culture if he hadn't a beat, if you two hadn't a beat Whitney, Michael Jackson, and Prince,
Right.
like in one fell swoop. You know what I mean? Because here's the reality of the matter: Sign of the Times is probably the weakest selling album of all those. Nah, Bad did numbers.
Yeah.
Whitney's album did numbers. Like, both of those did diamond level numbers. So it's not like, even though I know that it's like, I believe what Joshua Tree ended up selling 25 million worldwide, something like
It
that.
was a number, yeah.
Yeah, but they also have the advantage of being part. You know what I'm saying? So they had wide appeal that at the time.
And so it might. No, it's not. I mean, it is bad to me. Is like I haven't listened to it all the way through in a very long time, but to me, it's very Appetite of Destruction, uh, that kind of way. It has some huge, huge, huge hits. Some other
Yeah.
stuff that's kind of it's fine. It's not bad. Not the same kind of. You're freezing, brother. I think people keep texting you. I think you keep freezing.
I'm about to say you're
Maybe I
frozen
don't
on
know.
my end. Is that because somebody's texting me?
I'm because the stream is a few seconds behind, so I'm watching it on my. Maybe it's. Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. And we're talking about whole albums here, not singles. So, like,
Brilliant projects. You know what? Too, I did have a get off my lawn moment this morning too, Andrew, where I literally said to myself, "They really don't make music like this
yeah,
anymore. They
it's
literally
hard to go
don't
back and
make
listen
music."
to this and not think that. Like, um, and one of the things that I like, the synth drum machine stuff is not my favorite, right? Like that's like that kind. I like more organic sounding things. So that was something that bugged my ear the first time I listened to the Sign of the Times, and then I listened to it times. I'm like, oh, I start like getting in tune with what he's doing. But it took a minute for me. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of electrical. I mean, like especially drum wise. But I see what he's doing there. Joshua Tree is not like your is a Sign of the Times, but it is a very important to me. It was like I'm trying to go back and think because I've been working on an article about like the music that made me, and this is one of the albums that did. Like the albums that I actually had on cassette tapes, like back in the early '90s, and this was one of them. Joshua Tree was. If you will, and then my friends and I. I don't know, it's been 10 years now, probably now, that we did a little, not a contest, but just kind of dicking around or whatever, where we each of us had to like play covers of all the songs on one album. And I did Out of Time by REM first, which is the one with Losing My Religion and that kind of thing. And they were being very slow, so I started doing Joshua Tree too. So um, for those of you who are dedicated diggers on the internet, you can probably find on YouTube somewhere me playing some of the U2 songs on the ukulele and stuff like that. They're pretty bad covers, but those are things that exist. So what I'm saying, all that to say, like this is an important record for me, um, and I don't know that I mean I've heard songs from Sign of the Times, but I don't know that I'd ever listened to Sign of the Times like front to back the whole way through. And they're two despite having been released 2 weeks apart and despite having a lot of thematic similarities, I think they're trying to do it's like comparing two very different things, right? It's two very different things. I think Joshua Tree is a perfect album. It is start to finish. Like there's no bad notes, there's no filler songs, there's no bad lyrics, there's no like it is solid all the way. And it's concise too, despite it being this 11, 12 songs, maybe 11, I can't remember. Um, uh, which is hard to do to have that many songs. It's not that many, but you know what I mean. I mean, most of your perfect end to end albums are 9, 10, like that. It's hard to have 12 that are perfect all the way through. Um,
Full song, full songs. It's like the shortest song is like 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Most of the song venture into the four.
yeah, and it's a one of one album too. Like there's no other album like it. There's no other like stylistically album. Edge's guitar playing that like you know what I'm talking about, the guitar playing that the way he plays. There's nobody else that does that. Um, in that kind of register. It's a very the only albums that sound like it are U2's next album, Achtung Baby. Like that's the only other one that sounds like that. It's very original sounding, and it has a very like unified sound throughout. I mean, all the songs don't sound the same, but it is a very um, it has a very unified like sound all the way through. Um, like I came into this and I'm glad that we're not like setting this up as a debate really, because I don't want to have a debate show particularly. We're just having conversation because there's so many shows that I've seen, and JJ Reddick's among them. No offense, JJ, love you, man, but like that were set up that way as conversations originally have kind of devolved into people yelling at each other, and it's just not really my thing. So um, I don't want this to be that, but um, I am coming here to say, like, I know there's no universe in which I'm going to talk you into the fact that Joshua Tree is a better album than Sign of the Times. Like, I know that's not a thing that's going to happen, and I'm not really going to try either. Are you there still? You look kind of frozen. There you are.
I've been jumping on my side almost this whole time, so I've heard what you've said, but it's been coming out like faster and later.
Hmm, okay,
So we might be having some issues today.
yeah. Can y'all that are in the chat or whatever? Can you hear us clearly? Is the audio effed up at all, or is it sound pretty good on y'all's end? Anyway, while they're thinking about responding, um, Sign of the Times. This is from an amateur listener. This is not. I am not somebody who dislikes Prince, but I'm not like a Prince super fan. I don't know his catalog as thoroughly, obviously. So I'm not like. This is kind of a new and a newer ish set of eyes on it, as opposed to somebody who's listened to this album hundreds of times over the years. Um, it. I can see why you like it a lot. Like I understand your obsession's not the word, but your the way you love it. Like it is it reads to me, here listens to me like a chat, like he's challenged himself, right? He's like, it's almost like he said, here are all the great artists of the early to mid 80s. I'm going to make a single song that's just like every single one of them, and I'm going to do it better than them, is what it feels like to me. I mean, there's some throwbacks that go further back than that too. I actually made a list this morning. This is what I did this morning while I was eating breakfast, alongside helping kids get dressed and so forth and so on. That made a list of the songs on Sign of the Times and the song or artist that he was. I'm gonna be really careful here because people are going to think I'm saying ripping off. That's not what I'm saying. That he's showing, he's making a song in the style of, right? I mean, he's putting the Prince spin on all of them, obviously, but like, but there's at least one for every single song in there.
So I will tell you, I think your analysis of that is spot on. I think first of all, this is Prince's ninth album,
Hmm.
and so extremely accomplished. Like for somebody, think about it. He's done 9 albums. It's
He's 20.
19. He's done 9 albums. He's 29 years old. He just came out in 1979. It's 1987. He's done 9 albums.
Hmm.
There is something very much like the old adage goes: anything you can do, I can do better.
Hmm.
And that is the ethos of this album from an artist perspective. He is really out to show you that he is the most accomplished artist ever.
Hmm.
It does feel like that is the ethos of the album, has in, no, I can pick a classic artist, I can channel them and do the song that they would do, but
Hmm.
add my twist to it, which is going to make the song better.
Yeah, and that is.
And he's the
I,
only, I
I mean,
think, can pull that off too. And that's what makes that part of what makes the album so special to me. It's like, no, who else can do James Brown and Stevie Wonder and Curtis Mayfield, like you mentioned, and like who else can like do this in the gamut of one album and still make it fit somewhat?
yeah.
Like who else? You know what I mean? It's like, and what's funny is that I want to hear your list, because when you said he's even doing, you told me behind the scenes he's doing a little bit of Michael Jackson, and it's like I've been listening to this album my whole life, and I never got that until you said something. So I'm fascinated to see what your list entails, because I know you take great notes. I think I know. I think I know about 90% of what you're about to say and what song you're about to say, what artist you're about to reference.
Well, a lot of it I've already said to you too. So like it's
Jackson, but you didn't go by song, and the
yeah,
Michael Jackson has me fascinated.
yeah. So there are not. Hold on, let me look at this. I don't think there are any songs that were just Michael Jackson, except maybe "It." That was the closest one.
Okay, I
In
love.
style anyway. "Sign of the Times," the first song, like the title track, I think is Prince. I don't think that has a lot of correlations outside of that. I think that's his, like, this is all me song. Like that one feels more like him than others. The second one is, I mean, and not all of these are black artists either. Is it is a very um 80s pop song. I put Huey Lewis in the news, but like it's very kind of like that kind of the play on sun, yeah, Sunshine song. Yeah. It's a very pop, very, very pop song. Um and I don't mean that as a dismissive thing. It is a very popish song. Um and it does feel kind of like screw
Mhm.
you, Huey Lewis kind of song. Um the Housequake is a P Funk song, right? It's Parliament to me anyway. Um,
I think
yeah, I
James
mean, there's
Brown.
James. Sure. Like there's a as
Yeah,
I don't have to explain this to you, and
Parliament.
probably the people listening either. There's a lot of overlap between James Brown and P Funk, like that. There's a lot of yeah. That's that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's James Brown. You know,
yeah. Um,
and I think I always sexualize it as James Brown because that's such a dance song, and I
yeah,
think James Brown to make people dance. It's like that's literally a house party song.
yeah. And P Funk did too, though. I mean, that's
True.
literally they brought. What's the name of that fucking movie? The movie where it's a college movie. It's not Animal House. It was later. PCU is what it's called. And they literally brought P Funk and George Clinton into the basement to play in the movie.
I remember
Like, yeah,
that.
so great movie, but like it's definitely P-Funk is definitely party music too. It is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
The Dorothy Parker song, we talked about this earlier off camera too. That because you just did a reaction to Joni Mitchell's "Help Me," and that the song references that song in it. Like I didn't even know that it was in there, but I was like, wait, that's he just said "Help Me" came on the. Wait, he did. He just said "Help Me" came on the radio. Um, it's, but the actual song is more Hall and Oates ish. I think like it's a very pop '80s
I would
kind of
agree.
thing.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. When I thought Ballad of Dorothy Parker, I felt like there was some Bob Dylan or Tom Petty to it. Actually, me personally.
Yeah, there's
But Hall,
it's more lyrical. Yeah.
right? It's more lyrical than Dylan and more of a Hall and Paul
Yeah.
Simon.
There's Paul Simon in there too, for sure. Like the Graceland era, which is also about this time. It's like '86, I think.
Yeah, great album of the year too.
Graceland is one of my favorite like albums ever, too. Um, we may have to, after we get to the end of going forward, we might have to go backwards from '88. Um,
We got
it is the song that I think is the most Michael Jackson ish. Um,
mm,
it's not exactly, but it has the high pitched like it has that stuff in it too.
mhm.
Which is kind of the not my Michael Jackson checkpoint, the only one, but it is a checkpoint from hearing that.
Never thought about it. You said something, but now I'm playing the song in my head, and it's like I see why you could feel that way.
I don't think he's ripping him off. I do think I think he's winking at it though a little bit.
Lil Wayne. No, I can see that now that you're saying it. That's why I was fascinated to see what song you're going to do. And it is one of my favorite songs on Sign of the Times, actually, because I love the way that beat drops.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, next is Starfish and Coffee. That's a white people pop song too. Like that's I
Actually,
like Tom's Diner. You know Tom's Diner, the song I am sitting in the cafe and the man behind the cafe.
oh
Okay,
yeah,
Suzanne
yeah.
Vega. So that came out earlier that year. Um, and it feels has that kind of feel to it to me.
See, see, now it's funny because I feel like Starfish and Coffee is one of the most important songs of the album,
I love
and
that. That might be my favorite one.
yeah, it's one of my favorites too. But I tell you, the intricate and diverse level of songwriting reeks of Joni Mitchell to me, even though he's referencing Joni in another song.
Mm,
Starfish and Coffee, if you would have told me Joni Mitchell made that song 20 years before
yeah, it
or
would
15 years,
spark.
yeah.
It would.
And there's actually a story about Starfish and Coffee about that song is kind of based on a true story. The woman he was dating at the time
Mm,
went to a school with this chick, and it's about her, and it's like Prince literally he just like left them all sitting there and came back like 2 hours later with the song
wow.
done.
Yeah. When you're inspired, man,
Yeah,
it just hits you like you know that. I mean, you've written songs before, so like, um, yeah, it's a great song. Um, I remember talking about Slow Love with you because I was like, the first time I heard it, I was like, this is his favorite song or one of his favorite, your favorite songs on this.
yes,
Like, this is one of those obvious, and that this is more Marvin in that kind of, in that
yeah,
kind of lane, right?
yeah.
A very Marvin Gaye-ish, later Marvin Gaye-ish kind of song.
I love that you contextualize Marvin because this is the Marvin Gaye song on the album because it's subtly sexy. People don't understand like Marvin Gaye was never like overtly sexual outside of sexual healing.
Right.
There was a sex to his records that came through because of the subtle nature of it,
Yeah.
and this same feeling. Young is the night. It's
Mhm.
like, oh no, I love slow love.
You hear it in Marvin's voice, even
Yeah.
if you don't have to understand a single word he's saying. You can hear it in the voice, and
Yes.
it comes through in Slow Love too. Um,
Yeah.
the hot thing was the one I wrote for James Brown. Like that's a very James Brown-ish song to me.
I feel I feel like the funky side of this album. I'm glad I never thought of Parliament because every time I think about the funk on this album, I go to James Brown before I go to Parliament.
Mm,
So I feel like more than anybody else, I feel like he's covering a lot of people on this album, but I feel like James Brown and Stevie are who he covers the most.
yeah, and there I could I have one of them that sounded like Stevie to me, honestly, but that's we'll get to that in a minute. But I could make the argument that you put Stevie on all of them, right? Like you could make that argument that you could do that. I mean, if you're, it just depends on what era, because Stevie Wonder covered multitudes as well. Like,
I think Stevie is the only artist as versatile as him to cover all these topics and do it seamlessly. And so that's where it feels like, and I always thought that this was his version of Songs in the Key of Life too.
yeah,
And that's where I see Stevie in it, even in the format. It's like, oh no, because on Songs of the Key of Life, Stevie has something for everybody on Songs of the Key of Life. Sign of the Times is very much in that vein to me.
yeah. There are. It's a very diverse album. There's lots of different kinds of songs.
Yeah, the agility is astounding to me. Real quick, not the sidebar to the other.
But
Actually, go ahead. I want you to finish the song rundown because I think this is fascinating how you've broken it down song by.
I'm gonna say we gotta come back to it. Um, the what's Forever in My Life? That's the next one. It's that one honestly is the song on this album that would fit on the Joshua Tree. If you pulled the guitars out, if you pulled that kind of guitar, the Edge's guitar out, that song is very much in the style of the kind of With or Without You. I mean, you would fit along with that.
So that song is a wedding song. Like I know people that have gone down the aisle to that song.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and people that go down to With or Without You too. Like this, I can't live.
right.
That's it's very much in that kind of vein.
hmm This is also the most love songs Prince ever did on one album.
Hmm.
Like he wasn't necessarily known for his love songs, but he did a lot of love songs on this album.
Yeah, there are a lot.
hmm like Forever in My Life. I mean, even to me, Hot Thing is kind of like a love song. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
just I actually feel like Hot Thing is more inspired by the '80s rock bands.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's more of a Def Leppard,
It
Aerosmith.
would be pulling from like Def Leppard or Van Halen or somebody like that
Yeah,
too.
like it feels that way to me. Like the way those guitars go, the way the electric guitar goes on there.
Yeah.
Like just the pace, the BPMs that he's using on that beat machine that you're talking about that you don't care for too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand. He's so accomplished as a musician. People don't understand. It's like, no, he knew how to program a whole beat machine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he could literally make a beat like hip hop style before hip
Right.
hop were doing it, like on a beat machine. It's like he literally could do anything in the studio. It's like, yeah, I can play the beat machine, piano, guitar, keyboard, xylophone, like
He did everything. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so You Got the Look. That one, is that right? That's the name of it. Yeah, You Got the Look. That's Robert Palmer's Addicted to Love. Like the video that had like the women in
Oh,
the, you
familiar.
know what I'm talking about, yeah. Or In Excess too. I mean, that very much that kind of style of
Mhm.
song. I think Addicted to Love is the one that he's really explicitly not pulling from, but like thumbing his nose
I,
at.
I feel like he's winking at Addicted to Love more than he's winking at Michael Jackson on it.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems that one seems one of the more explicit ones that he's
Right.
doing.
I mean, this is what I mean is special about the album. It's almost like you get the feeling from how he's making these songs that he feels underappreciated.
Oh yeah, and this is what I was thinking as I was listening to it. I know one of the reasons I know that Coop loves this album is that it's competitive, right? And that is a hip hop ethos. That is
Yep.
fuck you, I can do this better. There's that kind of, you're not going to tell me that I can't. There's a lot of that. He doesn't ever say that explicitly, but
It
he
reeks.
setting himself up in comparison to
Yeah,
these.
it reeks. It reeks of his competitive nature and fire, and it is one of the reasons why I love the album so much. It like for me, his competitive nature never came out like this before, outside of Purple Rain, which Purple Rain is a direct response to Thriller,
Right,
like specifically like him and Mike. But this is him feeling like he's better than everybody and not getting credit for it,
right.
and it oozes through these records to me.
Like
I feel
this
um
and this and this and that.
yeah,
Yeah,
like no, I do everything. You guys do a few things. I do everything. It definitely has a hip hop ethos in that vein, and that is why I am so like partial to the album. Is because it's like there is a little fuck you in here.
okay. There's a lot, and the genius of it is that he doesn't ever say it, right? he
It's all
doesn't have
music.
explicit. You can just tell, like we were just saying about Marvin Gaye's voice. You know it's being sexy, even if you don't understand any of the words he's saying, just because of his. It has that kind of feel to it.
Hmm. Yeah. He is saying "fuck you, kiss my ass." Like he's just saying it musically, like through the proper channels. And
Yeah,
his way of saying "fuck you" is like, I can do all these songs that everybody else does, like at the drop of a dime.
yeah.
Watch me,
Look,
you know.
it's like it's hard. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of why I find the album so fascinating too, is because the album is so agile and diverse, but somehow it still comes together and makes sense. Like
yeah.
it's not
Really,
like
really.
yeah, it's not concise like the Joshua Tree is. It's not. Like you can see how Joshua Tree plays out. It almost plays out very cinematic like, you
Hmm.
know? And I think that's intentional.
Yeah,
He's all over the place on Sign of the Times, but there's something about it that it comes together.
I mean the times were pretty wild, right? So I mean it's mirroring the times. He's literally doing that.
Yeah. I feel like the next record that you're about to name is If I Was Your Girlfriend.
Hmm.
I think that is his record. And for me, that song is where this album starts trumping all the other albums that I find to be in the same vein of it, because he's the only man that I know that could write that song so well
Off.
and pull it off.
Yeah,
And
Janet was the one that I put down for that one. Like
boom,
Janet.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I was fascinated. I was like, when we get to If I Was Your Girlfriend, I was like, I wonder what woman he's gonna pick, because you can't pick a man.
No, I mean it's very explicitly in a woman's voice. Like it is.
Yeah, but who I mean, and this is what I mean. It's kind of like a trump card in like a greatest album conversation to me. It's like, well, what other male artist do you know that can write a song from a woman's perspective that brilliantly?
Hmm.
You know, like
And
it's him.
because it's not making fun at all.
No, it's actually, this is what I mean is like the love songs on this album run the gamut of love too. It's like you have the wild sexual love song like It and
Mhm.
Hot Thing. You have the traditional love song like Slow Love and Forever in My Life. You have the beautifully written love song at the end and Adore. But then you have this. And If I Was Your Girlfriend is just something different as far as a love song, because it's so in tune and it's so well written
Mhm.
that you might forget that you're listening to a man, and you might forget that it's a love song too.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And this song has been covered by women, most notably TLC on Crazy Sexy Cool.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. The Strange Relationship song is the Stevie Wonder song to me. I mean that one. What sounds. I mean, it's hard to compare any song to Stevie Wonder because are we talking about songs in the key of life, Stevie, or hotter than July, Stevie? I mean, there's lots of different Stevie Wonders
I think
styles in the world.
I think Strange Relationship is one of the songs that was recorded years before its release. I feel like Strange Relationship was originally made in like 83 or 84.
Right.
And so I do get the vibes that it's a little riff on Hotter Than July Stevie.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like to me.
It feels like, and I mean, the story. They went like, Stevie was such, you know, I don't even know the words, but record labels were looking for the next Stevie Wonder, and that's when they stumbled upon Prince, because Stevie saved a lot of people a lot of money because Stevie could do everything his damn self.
Right. Yeah.
And record labels literally went looking for the next guy to be Stevie Wonder, and that was Prince. And so there's a direct lineage and correlation between Stevie Wonder and Prince in terms of, well, this guy can write it, play it, sing it, in Prince's case, dancing in fucking high heels. You know what I'm saying? That was the Stevie effect. So it's like, I always feel like when I'm hearing some of his best songwriting and some of his funkiest songwriting, I feel like it's coming from the Stevie place, because he was the guy that the quote unquote industry heads had picked to replace Stevie, as Stevie, you know, kind of transcended out of his prime. Like Stevie's prime ending coincides with Prince's comeuppance in the
Mhm.
music business too, which I don't think is accidental. Like Hotter Than July is like 1980, 81, and Dirty Mind is 82, and then
Yeah.
Prince starts. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
it's not accidental or coincidental that it kind of happened that way.
Right. Okay. There are three more. Okay, so I could never be the take the. I'm sorry, you could never. I can't even read my own handwriting. Um, it could never take the place of your man. Is Summer of '69, is American Girl by Tom Petty. It is very explicitly like one of those. I think you've told me that you read somewhere that he was trying. That was one of the ones he was doing on purpose. Like, I'm doing this kind of song and I'm trying to do it better than them. But it
So
is of '69 for sure.
he wrote that song originally in 1979, 1980.
Okay.
And this is part of the genius of that record. First of all, I think that record is one of the best records on this album. Like,
Mhm.
I Can Never Take the Place of Your Man, to me, is a top 5 song on my favorite album. But how good are you that you can hold a song like that for 8 years? Like, most people don't have that capability in them, that a song like that. Think about this. Like, he wrote that song before he made Dirty Mind, Controversy, Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day.
It doesn't really fit on any of those records. Like,
Doesn't. That's what I mean about his genius, is that he knew that that song didn't fit anywhere, and he literally held it until it fit somewhere.
mhm.
And this is where it fit. But this is his stadium flow. Like, more than any other song, I feel like this is the song where he had a point to prove to the popular culture white audience about what his capability was.
Yeah,
That
like I can do that too.
Yeah, like, I can do your stadium flow that you love so much.
Mm. Watch me. Here it goes. Yeah,
In his book, he used to talk about how, like, he used to go sneak into Springsteen and Tom Petty shows and stuff, and
yeah.
he would, in typical Prince, a little shady, he would always kind of like say in jest, I love how they motivate their crowds. As in, like, I'm not impressed with anything. More impressed with how the crowd responds to them than I am with the music.
Yeah, and I love Springsteen and I love Tom Petty, and like they're great musicians and they're great performers too. But um,
I love Tom Petty more, but Born to Run is probably better
yeah,
than anything Tom Petty ever did, at least that I've heard.
yeah.
Would you?
The 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 classic Tom Petty albums. I mean, there's Full Moon Fever. That's the one with Free Falling and those kind of things. Is big time. Um, like an end to end album. I mean, the one that everybody listens to is the greatest hits one, which is not really a fair comparison, right? And then the Wildflowers one, which has much fewer gigantic songs on it. It's a much more in a Bob Dylan kind of style of
Def-
album. Um, and I love Wildflowers, um, but yeah, I think Springsteen's is probably
yeah, Born to Run's better.
it is. Um, we got what, three more, I think. The Cross is that era Aerosmith, honestly, without the big guitars. I mean, it's that kind of. It gave me some Janie's Got a Gun kind of vibes. I mean, it's that uh, kind of instrumentation. Um, then it's going to be a beautiful. Um, what is it called? It's going to.
A Beautiful Night.
Yeah, there you go. I can't read myself. That's a disco song, man. Right? That's. I mean, it's Bee Gees song. I mean, but it could be any other disco artist too. I mean,
Yeah,
it is pretty explicitly Bee Gees, I think. But like, if you want to say a different disco artist, that's fine. I mean, but it's very explicitly a disco-ish kind of song. And Adore is. We've talked about this off camera too, but I mean, the one he's pulling from is Al Green, I think, but um, both in the romantic way and in the gospel kind of infused. Um, the message I sent you about this was that D'Angelo stole his whole career from that one song. Like
yeah,
that, like everything that I've heard from D'Angelo that he's famous for, you hear on Adore first.
yes,
Like,
yes, 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 yes. 20 times over. Everything D'Angelo ever did is a like, you could go back to that song specifically. How about this? I feel like Maxwell and D'Angelo got their whole style from.
actually, another one I was going to say too. Actually, no.
Yeah, both of them got their entire style from that one song.
Hmm.
I'm not, like, no exaggeration.
If you're going to pick a song, it's a good one to pick, right?
I mean, it is my favorite love song ever, and it is a wonderful album.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just an immaculate moment of a love song. And here's the thing about it: like, he's not known for his love songs.
No,
You know, that's one of the things that's striking about this album to me is that, well, a lot of the high moments are the political commentary and the love songs.
Hmm.
That's not what he was excelling in before all of this.
Purple Rain, right? I mean, that's the that's what
Yeah,
that's what he
like,
was.
I mean, he's known for When Doves Cry and Let's Go Crazy, you know, for Controversy,
Little Red Corvette, yeah,
Little Red Corvette, 1999, Raspberry Beret. These are songs you really party to and rock out to more than you actually like sit up there and, you know, like play with your girl. Like if you're playing it with your girl, you and your girl are partying.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I mean, we're not ending the show now, but like some people are saying they got to go. So thanks for hanging out. We appreciate you. Thanks for hanging with. Um, yeah, it's one of the things. I mean, this is not really a competition between the two albums. I mean, we have to kind of pick an album of the year, and I think it's pretty clear that um, which way we've leaned right now. But like, I do feel kind of bad because like if Joshua Tree doesn't win album of the year from like the pop culture side of the world, then I don't know that I'm ever going to win one. Like it's never like what else is going to be like, because the next one, and I don't want to necessarily wrap up here, but like um the next year for 1989, the one that won is George Michael's Faith, which was a huge record. Like, but that was Tracy Chapman's album was that year. REM's Green was that year. I made a list of all the hip hop albums that were that year too. It's absurd. It was that's Easy Does It, Straight Out of Compton, By All Means Necessary, Strictly Business, Follow the Leader, I'm the DJ, he's the rapper. Like Straight Out of Compton was that year. Greatest Adventures of Slick Rick was that year. Takes the Nation of Millions was that year. Like that's like there are plenty of rock sided albums that were very good this year, but they were much more of the ones that were like the precursors to the huge albums. Like there's a Surfer Rosa by the Pixies was that year. Um, Daydream, like the Sonic Youth album was that year. Daydream Nation. Nothing Shocking by Jane's Addiction was that year. Like there's some albums that are not that are kind of like the precursors to your Nirvanas and Pearl Jams and all that kind of thing. But
first
like that
first
list of albums is just absurd.
well, first of all, let me say the only rap albums that probably deserve to be in that conversation had things been different is It Takes a Nation of Millions.
Hmm.
And yeah, It Takes a Nation of Millions. That would be the one. But I'll also tell you this. I'm totally okay with George Michael winning for Faith in 1989.
Yeah, like that was a huge album.
My
Huge.
mom had that album.
Hmm.
Like like that was one of those albums that did kind of transcend you know, genres of music and people and styles. Like Father Figure is one of my favorite songs too.
Yeah,
Like I
it's actually not terribly distant, not thematically, but stylistically from Sound of the Times. Honestly, like it's it's
oh
it's, it's pulling from the same
yeah.
crib.
I mean, all these guys are icons, and they're great artists and song makers. What I will tell you is that, and here's my thing. And first of all, like I'll tell you, it's like, and I've said this before. I love the Joshua Tree, but what does it say? And I'm not saying that it shouldn't have won Album of the Year per se.
Right,
But what I am questioning is that when our most accomplished artist makes his most accomplished piece of work
right.
and he still loses,
Hmm.
like not even saying our best, because I think best sometimes is too opinionated, too subjective.
Yeah, your version of Best and mine are not the same, and
Right.
we a lot of things. So
But as far as accomplished, oh no, if somebody says they're a more accomplished musician than Prince, they're going to have to show it because I can run you down the line and tell you that you're not. So
right,
when our most accomplished artist makes his most accomplished encompassing piece of work and he doesn't win, what does that say culturally to us is really the question that I'm raising. I'm not saying that the Joshua Tree doesn't deserve it. And the Joshua Tree has a leg up that I didn't realize when I did my research. Do you know that that is the first album released on CD, tape, and vinyl?
No, I did not.
I didn't find that out until I did some research a couple of days ago because I was so astounded by the sales, and I'm like, man. And
It's,
so
it was
think
a big album.
Yeah,
Like,
so think about the leg up that they had just in it being available on the quote unquote at the time enhanced CD. It is the first album to be released on all three platforms. And so, while I mean, not to be funny, while motherfuckers are still buying albums, and sometimes you don't even find some of this stuff on tape, they had the CD at their disposal. So they were able to hit a whole nother market
right.
that not even Michael Jackson and Prince were able to hit. You
Mhm.
can't come back into my community and tell us that doesn't have something to do with their whiteness. You get what I'm saying? And
Yes.
so it's moments like that where it's like, well, A Sign of the Times and Bad were available on digital CD as soon as they came out. What would have happened? You know what I mean? And it's those questions that we're left asking. And I want to be very very delicate in how I say this because I know Bono is an activist and I know he's somebody who really cares. You know, him and his wife, I believe, took a trip to Central America around the time of recording of this album. He's made dozens of missionary trips to Africa. He is a community focused person, not just a white community focused person.
Right.
To a black person who is not as maybe musically inclined as me, Andrew, and not as worldly as me, that hasn't had the experiences that I've had for better and for worse, some of the Joshua Tree can come off with a little bit of privilege to it,
Okay.
as in like it connects with the privileged white audience on a level that it will never connect to the disenfranchised black audience.
Right.
Even though I find the songwriting and the commentary to be of the highest level, there are black people that are not going to be able to relate to it.
Okay.
And that's why I bring up the fact, well, the best songs on Sign of the Times are actually like love songs and social commentary songs. You
And there
know?
were three of the songs, I mean, like that I said, are very explicitly pulled from white artists. And I mean that to say that there's something for everybody there. It's not
Yeah.
just a black experience album. It's kind of like What's Going On. I mean, it works that way, right? I mean, there are songs on there that, like Mercy Mercy Me, like that's one of my very favorite songs in the history of the world. Like,
Yes. Inner City Blues is like one of my top 5 songs of all time.
yeah,
Yeah. I love it. Every time it comes on, I have to hear it. Like,
yeah,
have
yeah. We
soon
used
as
to,
yeah. So I understand that part. But that's the part that I'm questioning. I'm not questioning the genius of the album. The genius is all over the album. Not questioning the songwriting, the formula, the musicianship. No, it's all as top notch as it gets. I'm questioning the level to which it resonates over on my side for because I look at myself as more of an outlier in my community, especially when it comes to my musical taste.
right,
I'm very fortunate to have a mother that bought albums like George Michael's Faith when I was younger.
right,
So it's like you and me doing this show. Well, it's not a too far cry from my childhood. My mom listened to Madonna. She listened to George. She listened to Celine Dion. You know what I mean? My aunts listen to the OJs and Parliament Funkadelic. We all listen to Michael Jackson and Prince. I grew up in an eclectic music household.
right.
Most of my counterparts, especially from my age demographic, did not. And the relatability of the Joshua Tree to my community is what I'm questioning
What you're saying,
when
yeah,
when if my community were to go and look up the album of the year nominees in 1988, here's exactly how the commentary is going to go. How the fuck did these white boys beat Whitney, Michael Jackson, and Prince in 1988 without even hearing the album? You understand? Because that album, for as transcendent it is in rock and in popular culture, it hasn't transcended into my community to the point where somebody would even be able to make sense of it. I happen to be familiar with the album. I happened to tell you last year prior to even us having this conversation, no, this album's perfect.
it is.
And so, but understand, once again, most people in my community are not familiar with this album. Think about this. It sold 25 million records worldwide. I would love to see the numbers on how many black people own it, though.
Yeah,
For the
but inverse is also true too. I think, like in the wider community and the white community or whatever, this is my experience anyway, that if they're talking about Prince, they're talking about all the songs they said before that, talking about Purple Rain and When Doves Cry and um, a Little Red Corvette and all like those songs like that. When they're talking about Prince, they're talking about, that's what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know me very well, and you know that I listen to everything all the time, and I have a very eclectic musical taste. And I told you at the beginning of the show, like, I've never listened to this album all the way through, ever, not once. So, like, I see your argument, I do, and I accept it to be true. But I think the inverse is also true too. I think the Sign of the Times should have made inroads into the in the wider community, but I don't think that it did in the same kind of way, um, either.
No, no, it didn't. But here's the
It
flip
should.
side to that. Because of the records that he did prior to
Mm-hmm.
this was probably the shocking part for him as an artist. Well, he had made those inroads the previous 5 years with your community.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they weren't familiar with this album, everybody in your community is familiar with who Prince is.
Yeah.
Everybody in the community is not familiar with you too. And that's where I bring up the demographics, where it's like, well, because of what my guy did, if we're picking sides, because of what my guy did, well, even if you don't know this album, you know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For black people that were just to Google this, they'd be like, you too? Who the fuck is that? And there is something about that that feels separatist. And I'm not faulting the artist for
Right.
that.
That's
Because
radio stations and stuff. Sure. Yeah.
because I think that if people who are really in control of these matters, like if you hear the Joshua Tree, like for me, that's a record everybody needs to hear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And the fact that my community is not privy to the record is really more of the issue that I'm raising. That's what I'm saying. Is it's like I'm asking more cultural and demographic questions
Mm-hmm.
than I'm questioning the merit of the album winning album of the year.
Yeah. The issue. I'm not taking issue with what you're saying because I think you're right, but also that's going to be the case for everything that we talk about, right? Basically, right? I mean, that demographic divide and the way that's going to be tilted, right? That we think of, not we, you and I, but the culture tends to think of um, white artists as for everybody and black artists for black people. Like that. That's a shame. I don't think they should, but realistically, that's what
Like,
I mean. When people say artists and black artists, right? I mean, they say that. So, like, um, my point, the
so
bigger point is that that's going to be the case for everything that we discuss too, not just
right,
Prince and U2.
right. But I mean, and I've done my looking. It's like, man, I don't know if there's a stronger two albums up for album of the year at the same time either necessarily.
It's a tough one. Um,
It's a tough. It's like I went through and did the list. I'm like, well, I want to kind of start here because this would be the toughest to choose from
mhm.
on a musical level. Like if we were to cut everything out
Yeah,
and put faces on everybody, this would be the toughest album to have
yeah.
anyway. And what you and I try to do at the end of the day is bring it back to the music and make it about the music. And so let me highlight that I feel like the Joshua
I,
in terms of the social content trying to deliver.
you cut out for a second. Yeah,
I
there
froze
you
up
are. You're
again.
back.
Okay. Yeah. So I feel like without any bias are equal. And that's why it's a good place to start because I think
Hmm.
if we can have this dialogue about these two albums it's going to be easy for us as we move along in this and go forward and go backwards to be like, no, actually, that album just.
Right. Right.
I think all the other years are like that.
Yeah. I mean,
Like when you said Tracy Chapman, I was like, yeah, I was like, I like Faith more than I like that Tracy Chapman album. I just
I
do.
do. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I don't care that it's like Tracy Chapman just happens to be black. I find Faith by George Michael to be the superior album.
Yeah. Um, it'll be one of the other things that I'm looking forward to with this conversation too, is like when the hip hop albums, because basically none get nominated for album of the year ever. Um, the only one that is sort of ish a hip hop album that ever won was Speaker Box and Love Below. Um, that and Eminem's got a couple nominations, but there's not a lot of even nominations through the years. So when I'll be interested to see when you think that um, when hip hop albums start being like a reasonable like album of the year kind of thing, and not just hip hop album of the year, but like as an album of the year, because I think I think It Takes a Nation of Millions and Slick Rick and like those are
Yeah,
belong in that conversation as well.
I would agree with you. I would tell you just off the top of my head, and this is just me, the hip hop head in me. I would not be surprised if I myself didn't pick an album to be possibly album of the year from the rap side until Doggy Style in '93, which would be the '94 year. And if I'm not, and if memory serves, '94 was pretty loaded.
Yeah, the actual year 1994 was really loaded on this side for sure. Um, like so that would be the 1995 year, but
I'm
um,
sorry, Doggy Style came out in December of '93, so it would be up for nomination '94.
yeah, it would be the next for the 1990.
November, November '93, November of '93 it came out. So the '94 winner, Doggy Style is probably the first album that comes to mind just for me, where I'm like, no, that might have been the best album that year, like, period.
Green Day's Dookie was that year. I mean, there's a lot of like a lot of them that year. Yeah, just
Right?
for
How
a
about
bunch,
if
but that's the one that you would
yeah,
know the best, probably.
yeah, memory serves. Like I said, that was a pretty top heavy time too, just musically, period.
Yeah, and
But I also feel like Snoop is the first rapper who tore down a lot of our cultural
yeah,
barriers.
yeah. Like
Yeah,
everybody was singing Snoop songs. Yeah,
everybody was. Yeah.
yeah. So it'll be an interesting conversation, and we'll have to frame up how we're going to do the next one. Are we just going to do them in order? I guess.
Because here's what my thought was: is that like,
Mhm. Yeah. Mm, okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. Like to find the line between like what means the most to me and what means the like what was more impactful in the wider culture, what crossed over and more lines. Like we have to talk more behind the scenes and maybe even on the show about like how we're defining um, what it means too. Because I think that's really important. Because I think the Grammys, generally speaking, um, are set up that the biggest album, like the one with the most sales, the one that crossed over. Um, I think that is it the same year? I think it's the same year that Nirvana's Nevermind and Blood Sugar Sex
yeah,
Pearl Jam's 10 and all of that. That was either George Michael. No, that wasn't George Michael. It was either Clapton's Tears of Heaven or it was Bodyguard soundtrack, um, which was massive, massive, massive. But
and
as
it was massive. But I have to be honest with you.
Is it just one? It's just one song, right? Like,
No, Queen of the Night was the shit too, but there's only about 3 or 4 records on the Bodyguard soundtrack that even in my community we listen to on a regular basis.
right?
And so there is something to the numbers game that you're talking about, not just the black and white thing, because I Will Always Love You, like
Yeah.
Houston is arguably the greatest singer
Mhm.
ever, and that's her greatest vocal performance
Yeah.
ever. No, and so there is something to be said for the moment. But I'm not picking no damn Bodyguard soundtrack over Nevermind. That sounds absurd to me as a
And then
music lover.
was
You know,
like that's it's not even close, or Clapton's either. Like, I mean,
I don't
I
even want to talk about
don't
that.
remember which one it is. I don't know which year it goes in, but
I mean, how can I tell you? That sounds like a lifetime achievement
like,
award they gave Eric Clapton.
that this is we had this conversation again off camera too, but like the even Joni Mitchell, who we generally accept as one of the great songwriters ever, if not the greatest um, white folk songwriter ever. Um, you hear that? You froze for a second.
Yeah, I missed
Okay.
that part. You said something
The
about Joni.
Joni Mitchell, who we generally discuss on this channel as being the greatest um, songwriter, or one of the great songwriters that's ever lived, only has one hip hop, only one album of the year nomination for Court and Spark in '75, I think it was, and didn't win. Um, and the only time that she wins anything, I mean, she's won a bunch of like song of the year, and she won the folk album this year, like, but not like the big ones. Um, but like Herbie Hancock played a bunch of covers of her songs and one album of the year, and I don't know when it was, 2007 or 8 or something like that, which feels disrespectful to her too. Not that the album's bad, but like just like and there's a lot of people that have kind of gotten shafted in that way. You froze, you're frozen.
No, comfortable and confident in saying.
You, you're frozen. I
Did you hear
felt
anything
like
I said?
a good thing, and you froze, and I want to make sure you get all of that. That last little piece. Somebody must be texting him or calling him at the same time.
No, nobody's texting or
That's
calling me.
bizarre.
That's what's crazy about it. Um, could just be connectivity issues in the basement today. Um, she's easily one of the 3 best songwriters of all time.
Yeah.
It might be number one. And so it is disrespectful, actually, that he won a whole Grammy like covering her songs. That's that patriarchy I'm talking about, where it's like the more that I uncover about her music and the more I listen to her, I don't know if there's anybody better than her as a vocalist and a songwriter combined.
She's
She
special, special, special.
cannot play the amount of instruments that Prince can, but the only thing that I would give Prince over her is the fact he can play all those damn instruments. Because as a vocalist and a songwriter, I find her to be comparable, and in terms of like what I like to call effortless songwriting, she might be the best I've ever
Yeah.
heard, Andrew.
She belongs in the conversation with Stevie Wonder. I mean, like, she's up in that kind of that era,
Yeah,
that area.
her, Stevie, and Prince would probably be my top 3 songwriters, just about like the ability to write anything at the
Yeah.
drop of a dime.
Poetic,
And
it's
fat,
melodic. It's yes, it's everything.
yeah, Stevie would probably still hold that number one
I
spot.
can't.
But if you told me,
That's
yeah, but if you told me that she was a better songwriter than Prince, I probably wouldn't argue with you too much at this stage. And that's pretty high praise coming from me.
yeah, that's a huge deal for you. So we'll have to we'll get to Joni when we come back, because most of her like post 1980 really albums are not, they're good, but they're not the same kind of as For the Roses and Blue and Both Sides Now and um, Court and Spark and all those albums. Those are whole different. So I think it's probably about time to to get out of here. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it was a
Great
good
show.
show. I think we have established that Sign of the Times probably deserves the number one spot in this year. Um, and that's all we got, I guess, right?
I just think it's a very, very close conversation. How about this? If ever you were going to call it a tie,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty close one. It's a pretty close one.
Yeah, and it is a styles make fights type of thing, and not a white or black thing. Like
Right.
stylistic, what do you prefer out of your all time great album? You know? Yeah.
I think it's a good
Uh,
place. I have a couple questions I'm going to text you about in just a second too, but we'll get to that.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Click like and subscribe to our page, everybody. We appreciate y'all coming out.
Throw us $1. We'll see y'all next time. Take care.
Throw us 20. Shit.
Yeah, yeah, for real. We're about to. Never mind. I'll tell you that in a minute. I'll see y'all next time. Hopefully, we'll be able to pull up on Saturday mornings just generally now. And all
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the hope.
right. See y'all. Take care.